Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Higurashi no Naku Koro Ni. We are in the, what I would like to call prequel, which is technically Rika's story, but it's following a detective who was sent here during the dam incident in order to investigate the kidnapping of one of the I forget exactly who it is, but one of the children, one of the committee, the person that is making this damn project go, basically, grandson. So last time we kind of got a little bit into, he went out with Ooishi-san and got a little bit of the 411 from his informant about the town and such, and more about kind of what happened at the meeting, and that they were suspicious of him beforehand, and then he had some concerns about Rika. So we are gonna see how it goes. So let's continue, shall we? Chapter 4. I had a restless night's sleep. I did nothing but turn over repeatedly during a night that seemed like it lasted for eternity. Even then, I eventually fell asleep at some point, not realizing how high in the sky the sun had risen. I shook off the urge to go back to sleep. It was then I noticed that the phone was ringing. The time was almost 10:30 in the morning. It was clearly too late for a wake-up call. Akasuka-san? Good morning. It's Ooishi. Waking up to the sound of Oishi's voice was a little too much of a shock. My delicate ears were ringing. But thanks to that shock, I was suddenly wide awake. Hello. Good morning.
Could it be you just woke up? Even though you're on assignment, it's still not good to be asleep during regular business hours.
You're right. I'll be more careful in the future.
I have another tidbit that might wake you up even more. There was something interesting mixed in with the lost and found at the Hinamizawa police box.
I always forget what voice I give Ooishi, but I think it's kind of a southern one, so we're going to go with that. Lost and found?
Let's leave the details for when you get here. You think you'll be able to make it before noon?
No. I'll be there right away. Ooishi already knew what my mission was. Since Ooishi said it was something that would wake me up, it was hard to believe that it would be irrelevant. Honestly speaking, judging by the information from Sato-san yesterday, knowing that my cover was already blown, I couldn't wander to and from Hinamizawa carelessly. In other words, my investigation was at an impasse. If there was some information there that could put me back on trail, that would be nothing less than a stroke of good fortune. After vigorously washing my face, I pulled on my jacket and hailed a taxi, heading towards the Okonomiya police station.
You're here! The genius mahjong player has arrived.
So what exactly happened? With absolutely no intention of reminiscing about last night's mahjong game, I pressed him to get to the point. Oh, also, I apologize that I kind of cut through that chapter, but I had known nothing about mahjong, so it was completely uninteresting to me, and I apologize for that. Ooishi, anticipating that I would act that way, cut to the chase without any resistance.
Like I said earlier, something's arrived from this Hinamizawa police lost and found this morning.
Lost items that were turned over to the police box were sent to Okonomiya Station after the paperwork was filled out. Ooishi pulled out a plastic bag from the drawer and laid its labeled contents across the desk. Is that a wallet?
Indeed. There was small change inside, but no bills. We thought that a pickpocket threw it away after pulling out its contents, at first.
I didn't understand how this wallet, so far removed from Tokyo, could possibly be related to the kidnapping. If it had drawn Oishi's attention, It would have to be something dramatic. Like if the wallet belonged to the missing grandchild. That'd be absurd. Like something that convenient would happen. If that was it, then there was probably initials written on the wallet. Like the initials of Toshiki Inu... I gotta switch it around because I'm in Japan, so it's gotta be... Hantai desu. Inugai Toshiki, the minister's grandson, I.T. Thinking like that at this point, I didn't suppose that wallet was something that could get Ooishi so excited. Ooishi, after putting on a pair of disposable plastic gloves, handed me a pair of the same. I didn't feel that this wallet was such an important thing, so I had my doubts about whether there was any point in putting on gloves. However, I didn't want Oishi's intentions to go to waste, so I put them on. Ooishi opened up the plastic bag and pulled it out, showing me the back. As I had imagined, there were initials engraved there, but it was slightly more detailed than what I had thought, with Inugai Toshiki marked on it. Ooishi grinned at me with a look on his face that said, "See? We can't confirm that this belongs to the minister's grandson," I informed him calmly. This wallet was irrelevant. It was nothing more than Oishi's overeagerness. First of all, there was absolutely no way, in this distant locale, that the missing grandson's wallet would be found with such convenient timing. After all, the Onigafuji Defense Alliance wasn't related to the case in the first place. So there was no way this wallet belonged to the grandson. Why I wanted to decide that was the case even I didn't really know. Even though what I should have been top secret case was leaked before I had even been dispatched. In this situation, how could I say this was definitely unrelated? Would it be more prudent to pay more attention to this wallet? Yeah. It had only been a couple of days since I arrived in Hinamizawa. But in those couple of days, due to the number of remarkable events, my nerves might have just become a little frayed. Shaking my head slightly, I cleared it of unnecessary thoughts. Ooishi opened the wallet zipper, revealing the contents. Inside was small change and a number of crumpled receipts. Ooishi, from that jumble, pulled out a folded card. Seeing that, my heart stopped for a moment. It was a card from a dental examination. The name, Inugai Toshiki, and the age. A perfect match. The dentist's location was in Tokyo. He travels all the way to Tokyo for a dentist? Anyways, there was no need to explain any further. How far was it from Tokyo to Hinamizawa? It was far enough that taking the bullet trains and cars would still take several hours. Why would a wallet with a dental examination card from Tokyo show up in Hinamizawa? Could it belong to a tourist who came from Tokyo? Maybe a villager on vacation who just happened to pay a visit to the dentist. But no, it had to have fallen into someone's bag by accident. In my mind, I desperately struggled to find a possible excuse as to why this wallet didn't belong to Inugai Toshiki. It was as if it just wouldn't do for this wallet to belong to him. However, weeding out any possibility for error one by one, the haze surrounding the wallet in front of me faded, gradually letting it come into clear focus. See? I felt a shiver of electricity run up my spine. My pulse quickened, and a thin film of sweat began to coat my entire body. From Oishi's point of view, I was probably slack-jawed and spaced out, with a slovenly look on my face. Did you get information from the dental office? That's your job, Akasuka-san. I didn't go that far. When did this wallet show up? The person who picked it up was a villager. They did so yesterday, it seems. Not that. I mean, when was this wallet dropped? It rained here last week, exactly 7 days ago. It doesn't look like the contents are water damaged, so the longest it could have been was probably 6 days. Does anybody else at this station have knowledge of the existence of this wallet?
the officer who first encountered it at the Hinamizawa police box, and also the 2 or 3 people in charge of the lost and found. Other than that, it's just me and you. If it's involved in a classified case, it'd be bad to talk about, wouldn't it? I don't intend to wag my tongue. May I borrow a phone? Go ahead. Dial 0 to get an outside line. I dialed the phone number inscribed on the examination card. I could hear my pulse pounding inside my head. Could there possibly be something so absurd? The addresses on the receipts and the cards inside the wallet were all from around the area where the grandson lived. The name on the examination card was also a match. The time we deduced the wallet had been left behind also matched up with the timeline of the kidnapping. Of course, it was possible I could just laugh it off as a big pile of coincidences. There wasn't any strong evidence except for the card, which is giant evidence. Rather than all this circumstantial proof, the contents of the phone call I was about to make would have to have a great meaning. Hello. Sorry to keep you waiting. This is dental office. Hello. This is police. I have misplaced a wallet here and I'm trying to get in contact with the owner. Would you be able to help me? Inside the wallet there was an examination card from your office. Yes. The name is Inogai Toshiki. If I give you the number on the card, would you be able to look up the phone number? Yes, thank you. If you could. Still holding the receiver, I pulled out a notebook from my breast pocket with my free hand. I opened it up to the page with the grandson's address and phone number recorded on it. Yes? Hello? Yes, go ahead. Oh, wait, that was still Akasuka. I compared the phone number written in my notebook to the one that was being read out on the other end of the line. During that process, I spun around to look behind me uneasily. I locked eyes with Ooishi. Ooishi looked puzzled, wondering what the matter was. Why would I feel uneasy and look behind me? That was because the person on the end of the line was reading out the numbers as though doing so straight from my notebook. It seemed that HQ was in quite an uproar thanks to my report. No matter how many times the authenticity of the evidence I had linked to the grandson was called into question, I could only respond that it was the truth. When the lead investigator first picked up the phone, I was grilled about the evidence I found, that it was almost too good to be true, if I do say so myself. But after having doubt after doubt dispelled, he fell into silence. The receiver was finally handed over to the section chief. When he picked it up, the background thrum on the other end of the line disappeared, and I knew it had gone completely silent. After asking the same questions about the wallet that the lead investigator did, the chief quietly spoke his next words. Got it. We'll dispatch several people as reinforcements. They should be able to make it there by evening. Akasuka-kun, please continue your investigation of the area. Get some information on the spot where the wallet was found. Kanoi-san will select some people and head directly there. The fact that he was sending Kanoi, the lead investigator, here meant that the chief had decided there was a possibility that the Omega-Fuchi Defense Alliance was somehow implicit in the kidnapping. However, it felt as though until the lead investigator, whom he trusted, had verified the evidence with his own eyes, he was still going to be skeptical of it. How'd it go? Seems the HQ is sending reinforcements. I was ordered to investigate the area. Where was the wallet dropped? Around Takatsudo, apparently. This is Okanomiya. If I'm right, just out of curiosity, I'm pretty sure that's east of it, but
Yeah, that's very, very, very east of here. No, west. Very, very, very west. Kind of by the ocean. Alright, and my curiosity is sated. Then, even further upstream, way around here, is Takatsudo. Ooishi explained where the wallet was found by pointing to locations in the map on the wall. This place called Takatsudo was even more remote than Hinamizawa was. There's hardly anyone living in around the Takatsudo. It was deserted a long time ago. It's littered with abandoned houses, so it's really quite desolate around there. Ooishi-san, could I ask you to guide me to Takatsudo? Yeah, I don't mind. You can't really get in and out of Hinamizawa as you please by yourself after all. Of course, I'll have to make you wear that cap and mask again. That Ooishi had agreed to accompany was very reassuring. If Sato-san's info was to be believed, my cover had been blown. I wasn't sure if the villagers had realized that fresh meat dispatched from public safety was the tourists that had visited the village yesterday. In other words, me. But deciding that they hadn't noticed would have been overly optimistic. Given a cursory thought, Takatsudo, where the wallet was found, couldn't be ruled out as a hiding spot for the kidnappers. The Takatsudo area didn't have any residential buildings, nor was it alongside a highway. There wasn't a reason for even the locals to go out of their way to visit it. It was exactly what you would call a long-forgotten ghost town at the end of the road. You couldn't ask for a better place to hold a kidnapped grandson. Also, you couldn't get to Takatsudo without passing through Hinamizawa first. Though several conditions made the area all the more important. I couldn't brush it off any longer. There was no longer any doubt that the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance, or someone hired by them, were involved in the kidnapping. If that was the case, then the fact that this wallet was found might have already been leaked to them. They even knew so much as to how the Public Safety Division was operating. The case of the wallet couldn't be something they didn't know. In that case, there was a possibility the enemy was lying in wait. To dive alone into enemy territory, surrounded by enemy territory to say the least, required an amount of courage, recklessness that I just did not have. Without your company, Ooishi-san, I wouldn't be able to step into the village so easily. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Honestly, I thought you would ask for more money. Well, if we're being honest, Hinamizawa isn't exactly a place I like to go. I'd at least appreciate if you pay for a cab fare. Still, not every quest I can refuse from a friend that's played the same table as me. Doesn't he have a car? Ooishi grinned as he pounded me on the back. It struck me that he didn't want to jump ship rather than having any sort of sense of duty towards his job. Even so, that didn't really matter. Right now, I really appreciated the gesture. Well then, shall we hurry up and get going? If the enemy knew that the police had obtained this wallet, then they would probably have moved the hostage to a different place. There wasn't a moment to lose. But Ooishi, without regard to the fact that we were about to head out, began to remove his jacket. What are you doing? Well, just a precaution. If you want me to poke the beehive to get your honey, I have to be rather well prepared, you see. Do you want to put one on, too? What Ooishi pulled out from the door was a stab-proof vest instead of a bulletproof vest. His name was Inugai Toshiki, the grandson of the Minister of Construction, Inugai. There was only one reason for him being here, If you didn't include gym or art class, his grades were above average. That was the result of having private tutoring sessions twice a week. If you omitted the fact that he still couldn't do pull-ups, there wasn't much else that would make him hate school. Of course, he understood full well that his grandfather was a cabinet minister. But he also knew that not too many people were that interested in their relationship. He didn't like to go out of his way to bring up his grandfather, or call him the Minister of Construction. And finally, he at least tried to know a little bit more about what kind of work the Minister of Construction did. What that entailed was that when you tried your best to make life better for the masses, sometimes you make a few enemies. He knew that all too well from the time he'd spent as class representative. His grandfather had many enemies. He knew that he might personally catch some of the fallout, so he had to be twice as cautious. He was taught that by his parents. That's why the moment he was kidnapped, he instantly knew that this was one of those occasions. He had understood that he wasn't being treated as Inugai Toshiki, the person, but rather as Inugai Toshiki, the grandson of the Minister of Construction. That he wasn't personally at fault, but that this was the result of some unavoidable trouble with his grandfather's work. It made little difference, but when he realized it wasn't because of anything he did, he was able to relax, if only a little. Of course, at first he was struck with a terror befitting his age, wondering what was going to happen to him. But after a while of being tied up and only being able to lay down, he began to ponder a great many things. First, he thought about the reason he was being abducted like this. He understood the answer to that easily. He was taken hostage to coerce his grandfather, the minister. There was no doubt about that. He didn't exactly know what the Minister of Construction did, but it was easy to imagine that there was much to be gained from threatening him. He respected his grandfather more than most. He earnestly believed that his own grandfather was within the top 20 of the most important people in Japan. That was exactly why he wouldn't forgive anybody who tried to threaten his beloved grandfather. More importantly, he wouldn't forgive anybody who would use him as a tool to threaten his grandfather. His grandfather was really busy. He rarely had time to meet with relatives. That's why, with what little time he did manage to scrape together, he just dropped by unannounced. And as an apology for not being able to meet during New Year's or summer vacation, he doted on his grandson. So much. The number of times that Toshiki was looked upon with disregard just because his grandfather was a politician and a minister certainly weren't few. But he never thought, even once, that he wanted his grandfather to quit being a politician. Because it was his beloved grandfather. He wanted him to continue his career as long as possible from the bottom of his heart. However, Toshiki was now being held hostage, and his grandfather was being threatened. His grandfather, who called him the apple of his eye, was surely suffering. He might do anything to save his grandson. Maybe even putting aside his ideology if it was required to save his grandson. He might cave into the culprit's demand if it meant saving his grandson. When Toshiki thought about that, an inexplicable anger welled up within him. In his current situation, he was unable to forgive the cowards who would make his beloved grandfather suffer by using such dastardly methods. The feelings swelled up inside him, displacing the fear. What he thought at first was something any boy would imagine. Get out of these bonds. Beat up the bad guys. Hand them over to the police. Images of all the brave heroes from the manga he had read passed through the back of his mind. In his imaginary scenario, he slipped his bond easily, floating like a butterfly to evade his captors, then stinging like a bee to bring them all down. In the end, it was nothing more than his silly little fantasy, but with his vision obstructed and unable to see anything, it was something that he could get into more than any anime at the moment. In actuality, he was enjoying these little scenarios in his head for the long period of time he was tied. His captors hadn't really done anything to him that they would feel sorry for. However, eventually he began to grow tired of his fantasies, and more realistic scenarios began to run through his head. It was then he realized that none of them were a solution. Yes. He wanted to do something for his grandfather who was being threatened. That he was being held here to inflict pain on his grandfather was the thing that he could least forgive, and also the most vexing. And then he noticed there was a much simpler way he could save his grandfather without having to beat up his despicable captors. That was to remove himself as a hostage from the hands of these villains. If he was to disappear from here, his captors would have nothing to threaten his grandfather with. The captors had restrained him, but they didn't treat him roughly, and they made sure he was fed well enough. Meaning at the most he was nothing more than the means for the threat. They weren't looking to bully him or kill him. If he behaved, no ill would befall him. Realizing that gave him a strong sense of courage. And carrying his train of thought this far, he let it run its course to its natural conclusion. Right now, at this moment, Inugai Toshiki had decided to escape. His ears had been stuffed with sponge-like material, acting as makeshift earplugs. However, they didn't actually do much to block out any sound, and he could overhear everything his captors were saying. Realizing that this was to his advantage, even when his captors spoke to him, he acted like he couldn't hear them due to the earplugs. His captors, thinking he couldn't hear their conversation, talked with all sorts of things without any reservations. Thanks to that, he was able to obtain various pieces of information. First off, this wasn't Tokyo. It seemed that this was quite a distance away, and on top of that, in the countryside, nestled deep in the mountains. It also seemed that his captors were inconvenienced living out here, so he could deduce that this place was far removed from any sort of town. Finally, whenever they went out to buy food or other supplies, they would always take a car. That fact caused him some dismay, because he knew that the method he learned at school of running around blindly while shouting for help wouldn't work here. He paused his little mental escape scenario there. His ultimate goal was to find somebody who would help him. If somebody who fit that description wasn't close by, his chances of escaping successfully grew slim. A desolate, far-off land deep in the mountains. A place where you couldn't even go shopping without using a car. In this situation, escaping would be difficult. He grew depressed, and after a little while, he returned to his original scenario. Imagining becoming a hero like in the manga he read, beating down his captors became his respite. However, as he played those delusions out in his head, his heart, hating to surrender, continued to search for a way to escape. And then, he thought of a way. If the goal was far away, then all he had to do was get closer. His goal in a nutshell was to find somebody who would help him. In other words, somebody other than his captors. If he faked being sick, then his captors would have to take him to a hospital or bring a doctor to him. They'd probably be reluctant to do that. But he already knew that the hostage was more important than anything. In the off chance that something happened, like him dying, occurred, they wouldn't be able to threaten anybody anymore. Luckily, he had experience that would help him fake a serious illness. At the end of last year, he was inadvertently involved in a car accident and had to undergo surgery. The scar from that surgery was clearly visible on his lower torso. He recalled the pain and suffering from that time. The existence of that experience would make a huge impact on the realism of his performance. He was quite confident in his ability to fake an illness. His captors at first took a sign that he needed to use the washroom. Untying only his arms, they tried to bring him there while he was still blindfolded, but he didn't try to get up. His hands, now free, only clutched at his abdomen as he writhed in agony.
Hey, what's wrong? Does your stomach hurt?
He still had his earplugs in, so he pretended he didn't hear the captors asking the question. He was about to nod so hurriedly he had to stop himself.
What's the matter? Yeah, kid's clutching at his stomach. Must be a stomachache or something.
His captors looked down on his suffering form for a bit. One of them proposed a course of action, while another laid his doubts that Toshiki might be faking.
What's wrong, boy? Your tummy hurt?
His ears are plugged, so he can't hear ya.
Well, that's a problem. Do we got any medicine that works on stomach pain? Might want to go get to a pharmacy and buy some.
When it comes to stomach pain, there's a bunch of different meds, isn't there? As long as we don't know the cause, we shouldn't just buy him any old medicine.
He is old in his stomach. Maybe he's just constipated. If you buy him some medicine for that, maybe calm down. Won't kill him if we're wrong, neither.
Don't decide something like that on your own. It might be appendicitis or something. My uncle suddenly got it a while ago. That was pretty scary. One of the captors leaned over beside the boy who was bent over in agony. I feel sorry for the kid. Whoa, his whole body's covered in sweat. Is it your stomach? Does it hurt? Hey, if it hurts, you shouldn't clutch at it so tightly. It'll only make it worse. Realizing that his captors were concerned about his stomach, he inadvertently let his shirt ride up, letting the scar from his surgery come into plain view. His vision was still obscured with packing tape, so he couldn't see the reaction to his scar. But his captors were taken aback, and judging from their momentary silence, he had obtained the reaction he was looking for. Hey, this is bad. This scar, it's not that old. Does the boy have a fever?
There's a thermometer around.
No way we have one, but that's a lot of sweat. Yeah, his forehead feels pretty hot, I think.
I've heard that under prolonged stress, old wounds can be aggravated.
Then what do we do? Are you saying the medicine won't work? We don't know what the surgery this scar is from. But in any case, this is bad. In the worst case, it could be fatal.
That's bad. It's really, really bad.
Maybe we should have a doctor take a look at it. At this rate, there's a chance he might suddenly die. Inagaya Toshiki, with those few words, knew the situation was progressing exactly as he envisioned it. And snickering to himself on the inside, he pressed his act even further. He didn't even need to see to know that his captors were panicked and running around like chickens with their heads cut off at this troublesome turn of events. Should we take him to the clinic?
No, that's good. No good. Probably better if the doctor came here.
Dr. Irie, you mean? Is that okay? Will that be all right?
It'd be worse if anything happens to the hostage. Nothing we can do. It's an emergency.
One of the captors hurriedly left in the car. Another of the men, completely shaken up at this point, wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. It looked like they were bringing a doctor. As long as the doctor wasn't an accomplice, that doctor was his goal. He was someone he should seek help from. His captors were probably wary of that happening. They would be prepared for it. This would all come down to luck. Some of the sweat emerging from his brow was that of nervousness. At that moment, the packing tape that was covering his eyes and ears was torn off. The burning light he was seeing for the first time in several days hurt his eyes. After that, the gag that made it hard for him to breathe was also removed. Are you all right, kid? We're bringing a doctor to you right now. Just hold on for a bit. The doctor was coming. Now, how is he going to ask for help? How is he going to get away? A plethora of thoughts began swirling through his mind. I think you know this already, but don't say anything unnecessary to the doctor. We don't want to hurt you or nothing. You understand? Inagai Toshiki nodded while feigning pain and obedience. His expectations and the enemy's expectations. Whether they doubted he was faking his illness or not, they knew what his goal was and would try to stop it. His stomach contracted from the stress of this gambit, making it seem like his stomach really was starting to hurt. No, it really was. But there was no reason to panic. If he failed with his approach to the doctor, there was nothing to lose. If there was something to lose, it was this method of faking illness to get in touch with the doctor. If he could think of other methods from here on out, it wasn't much. But at the present, this was the easiest and most dramatic way he could think of. The more he thought about it, the more he looked like this was his first and last gambit. Eventually, he heard the sound of a car approaching once again. The sound of car doors being hurriedly opened and shut. The sounds of several footsteps approaching. A young man in a white medical coat. As he acknowledged the boy, a suspicious look showed itself on his face. I forgot what I gave Iri-san. Who's he? He's not one of the kids from the village, is he? The captors didn't respond. From the looks of it, the young doctor had realized that this was an abnormal situation. One of the captors talked threateningly. That's got nothing to do with you, Doc. For a while, the doctor and the captors silently glared at one another. However, unable to stand the sight of the boy continuing to suffer, the doctor, as the captors had hoped, didn't press any further. I'm concerned about this old surgical scar. What kind of operation was it? We don't know. I should really bring him back to the clinic. Doc, we really can't do that. The doctor said he wanted to bring the boy back to the clinic, but the captors simply silently shook their heads at the notion. It was fleeting hope, but it was only natural the captors would refuse. At that moment, his eyes met with the doctor's. Seeing that the boy's painful state was abnormal, the doctor suspected it was a serious illness. Are you all right? I'm a doctor. When was this surgical scar from? Last year. During the winter. From an accident. An accident? I see. This is the problem. He couldn't let the doctor figure out that he was faking it here. He had to somehow figure out some way to keep this going and tell the doctors that he was being confined and needed help. Well, if the doctor knew he was faking it, then he would probably... He's already suspicious, so... You know. I'm going to touch the affected area, okay? If it hurts, tell me where. Seeing that it was extremely painful, the doctor crossed his arms and began to ponder. He had to somehow get himself to a hospital. To Inigawa Toshiki, faking this illness was the performance of a lifetime. I don't know who this is, so we're just going to normal voice it. Good work, everyone. I know it's hot, but please do your best. If you catch anybody illegally dumping, please contact someone immediately. We'll act quickly. Oh, okay. Thank you for your cooperation, Ooishi-san. I don't know why I have the New York accent today. It just is. Please. A gap wide enough for a single car was opened up in the barricade. Ooishi, showing his gratitude, or perhaps a threatening attitude, with a short beep on the horn, rolled the car forward through the checkpoint. This time, my appearance was the very embodiment of the word suspicious. A baseball cap, mask, and sunglasses. On top of that, even though it was sweltering, I was wearing a hoodie. Any respectable police officer would be loath to not stop me for questioning. I had meant to be overcautious, knowing full well that my face was known, but it might have been too late for that to have any use. Using that as an excuse, I doffed the unbearably hot hoodie and windbreaker, ripped off the mask and hat, and threw them in the seat behind me. Ugh. Oh my! Is that okay? With a cheap little disguise like this, they probably figured it out anyways. That just might be the case. Ooishi, probably thinking that my unexpected behavior was funny, continued to laugh. The beautiful and pristine scenery of Hinamizawa spread out before me. The village itself would have been quite beautiful if it weren't for the complicated circumstances surrounding it at the moment. I would absolutely love to take Yuki here for a drive one day. Come to think of it, I didn't get a chance to call her last night. I played around with the idea in my head, but in reality, this village wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I had heard everything at the prefectural headquarters. At the heart of this village, the intelligence network that the three families wielded was, due to blood ties and regional relationships, unbelievably well organized. Their net spread not just around Hinamizawa itself, but incapacitated the entirety of the city of the Shibone as well. When I first heard that, somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I didn't take it completely seriously. How could a local organization in the boonies here have something so grandiose? I couldn't deny that somewhere in the back of my mind I had ridiculed the thought. But not only were they really threatening the minister, but they had demonstrated they had a complete grasp on our movements, which were supposed to be top secret. They were almost like the secret police that controlled a small Eastern European country, like in some spy novel. The villagers here wouldn't bat an eye at getting their hands dirty if it meant fighting the dam project. I also heard something like that at the prefectural headquarters. Now that you mention it, when I first arrived here, Ooishi also said that this place was a war zone, didn't he? The residents of this village were at the same time freedom fighters, although by definition they were no different from guerrillas or militia. They weren't protected by the Geneva Convention, but they also didn't have to adhere to those rules either. This place was more of a quagmire than any legitimate battlefield. A secret war was unfolding. I could drive along because Ooishi was with me. But if I was to leave this car for even something as trivial as looking for a vending machine, there was a chance I wouldn't return. Even though a single shot hadn't been fired, this was a battlefield. No, the reason why bullets weren't flying was simply because it was hard for that's obvious, civilian to obtain a gun in Japan. I mean, I thought he was being metaphorical, but... So they were probably just equipped with weapons other than guns that were easier to obtain. That was why Ooishi was wearing the stab-proof vest, wasn't it? Akasuka, are you nervous? Are you nervous? The fact that I was apprehensive was, of course, picked up on by Ooishi. If he already figured that out, there was no point in trying to deny or hide it. Of course I am. We're headed into the heart of enemy territory alone, aren't we? I'm worried about something. With just the two of us. Something unlikely? It'll be all right. Isn't everybody in this village our enemy? If everyone gets their story straight, they could murder someone in broad daylight and there wouldn't be a shred of evidence. I'm asking about something like that. This is what the ironclad rule of not barging into a Yakuza's office alone was about. If there wasn't a neutral party involved, that area wasn't bound by the laws of common sense. If something happened, you wouldn't be able to prove it, and there wasn't anybody who would take your side. It was pretty much the definition of poking the bear. I've left word that we're headed towards the Hinamizawa area. And in the worst case, we've also got a radio. I know you're scared, Akasuka, but it's not that easy to pull off the perfect crime. Well, of course that don't mean we can't let our guard down either. Akasuka, you're too worked up over this. You were more relaxed the last time we came up here together, weren't you? Laughing it off, Ooishi thumped his chest and grinned, as if to say I could depend on him. Well, if it gets real iffy, this comes with having the badge. Ooishi made a motion by sticking out his index finger. It was undoubtedly the image of a gun. Will it be of any use? If you're not afraid of dealing with the aftermath after you shoot, it's actually very reassuring. An officer's gun was only for show. If you really wanted to fire it, there were quite a number of stipulations, and you had to be prepared for the long probationary period afterwards. That definitely wasn't worth it. So even if an officer did unholster his gun, there wasn't one who actually wanted to pull the trigger. Akasuka, are you carrying one? A piece? Well, yeah. You ever fired it? I have. For training, though. Well, I guess that'd be true. Well, then, have you, Ooishi-san? Me? Nah, there's no way. What's this? I thought he was laughing at me because he had experience. The two of us laughed together. I've also never pointed the barrel at anybody. I've looked down the barrel of a gun a few times, though. Just being made to look down the barrel like that will shorten your lifespan by about 3 years. Even if he had never fired a gun before, you couldn't even begin to compare the amount of experience Ooishi had over me. At a time like this, I could only marvel at how reliable he seemed. Come to think of it, I didn't want to come this way in the middle of the day, but there's no way for a car to get through other than here. Akasuka, just in case, put on that mask again and hide your face. What's the matter? Can you not hear it because the air conditioner is too loud? I'll turn it off. Try opening the window. When I opened the window, a blast of hot air blew inside, and then I could hear angry yelling coming from far away. At that moment, the forest gave way on either side of us, and our view expanded suddenly. And there could be seen the Hinamizawa Dam construction grounds, the very front line for Hinamizawa Village. We're opposed to the construction of the dam! The crackling blare of someone's voice sounded over an enormous loudspeaker. The roar of angry voices continued to rumble. The incredible volume had become a veritable sound cannon, spewing out its ammunition. The prefabricated site office was surrounded by 2 sets of high fences laid with barbed wire. Lined up in front of those fences were riot police in their vehicles. And surrounding it all were the villagers. They howled out their protests against the dam as a single entity. Oh, there's not too many of them today. We're in luck. That's not too many? Yeah, well, when there's a lot of them, the crowd reaches as far as the road. You wouldn't even be able to inch forward in a car. At first, due to their overwhelming intensity, it looked to me like there was more people than there actually was. But upon closer inspection, there were at most 50 to 70 of them. That's a lot. I didn't even think this town had that many people in it, to be honest. But the 6 or 7 propaganda trucks lined up that looked like they belonged to a band of thugs were a strange enough sight. The villagers were also wearing helmets and bandanas, as well as covering their faces with masks, adding to the oddity of it all. The propaganda trucks, after braying their chorus, had their volume turned up even higher and began to flood the area with sutras. To say that the noise was downright violent wouldn't be an understatement. From this distance, it was still this loud. The glass in the office was probably rattling from the noise. They can't do anything there but take it. Those Rat Squad guys, every one of them is wearing earplugs, but they're still having their hearing damaged. Poor sobs. Can't you do something about it with noise ordinance laws? Our prefecture doesn't have any laws regarding noise ordinance. Also, those are sutras, right? We can't regulate religious activities. Those guys are pretty smart. Is what I think Ooishi said. Actually, no matter how tightly the window was shut, the booming sound of the sutras still filled the car. I couldn't even hear what he was saying, and he was sitting right next to me. As the car approached the line of propaganda trucks, the blare became difficult to bear. It wasn't enough just to plug my ears with my fingers. I had to hold my head to keep my skull from splitting apart. If I had seen this terrifying energy sooner, I would have probably understood what Hinamizawa was much quicker. Now that I knew, they wouldn't blink an eye at sacrificing themselves in order to protect their hometown. So goddamn noisy. Shut up. My head throbbed. It felt like it was going to split apart. My eardrums crackled, and on top of it all, I felt like I was going to throw up. With the road crowded with the throng of squatters, the propaganda trucks, and the riot police's vehicles, it was no easy way. Even if you tried to shoot the squatters with the car horn, they were also wearing earplugs, oblivious to noises from the outside world, and wouldn't easily move. The car could only inch forward at a snail's pace. Even then, the car eventually got through, starting to leave the tumultuous noise behind. Hey, the bald guy that was playing mahjong with us last night. Remember him? I remembered that there was an older person who didn't exactly mince words. The guy that Ooishi's called Old Man. There was someone like that. You see, he's the foreman of the main construction site. He's probably holed up in that prefab build trying to work while irritated out of his mind. Poor fella. You wouldn't be able to stand it if it's like this every day. Yep. There's no end to the number of people who can't handle it and quit. But every time that happens, their wages go up. So I won't say it's in vain. Even having to deal with all that noise and hostility, they still made a wage that Ooishi found enviable. Damn it, these guys! Can they hear or can't they? A group of squatters were in the way of the car. Ooishi, sufficiently annoyed, laid into the horn, but there was no indication that they were moving anytime soon. In this din, could they not even hear a car horn? Or did they hear it and were being malicious? If there were any riot police nearby, they would have people move, but it just so happens there weren't. Jeez. Wait a minute! Ooishi opened up the door. The hot air and even more heated roar of the crowd spilled into the car. Ooishi said something as he grinned widely, but I couldn't hear what it was. He was getting them to move. Something like that? Ooishi stepped to the car and closed the door. The din faded slightly. I stared blankly as Ooishi headed towards the group and started some sort of conversation. Maybe we'd find the minister's grandson at Takatsuda. After the very least, I wanted to find him there. Find him and slip the cursed bonds of this incomprehensible village. I could only pray. At that moment, a shadow was suddenly cast over me. Somebody was standing right outside the passenger side window, blocking the sun. I spun around, looked up, and realized who the backlit figure was. Huh? It was a girl. It was Furuge, Rika. The girl stared down at me with a bored look in her eyes. I didn't have any justification for it, but I felt like I had been found by somebody I shouldn't be found by. To fill the silence, I raised my hand as I mouthed a meek greeting. Of course, there was no way she heard my small voice in this clamor. But even then, she should have seen me wave my hand in greeting. In spite of that, she simply stared at me with a cold look on her face. At that moment, the noise and heat spread throughout the car once again. Ooishi had returned to the driver's seat. Taking a look, the group that were blocking the road had started to move aside while glaring our way. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Shall we go?" Ooishi registered the figure of the girl behind me. One of the villagers came over and picked her up. In a matter of, "It's dangerous, so get away." It was then that she whispered one or two words. However, I couldn't hear any of it. "Well then, let's go. I'm gonna gun it, alright? But of course, still within the speed limit." As if to shake off the still audible angry voices, Ooishi floored the gas. Along with the roar and din of the shouting, the villagers and the girl quickly disappeared behind us. "As soon as we're through here, we're in Takatsudo. Are you alright if we end up getting in a firefight? Don't be fumbling with the safety at the last moment, you hear?" Ooishi laughed at mockingly again. I was more concerned with what that girl said, however, as I was vaguely bothered by it. What was she trying to say with that apathetic and candid expression? "Suppose it's normal if you're nervous from here on out, but if you don't deal with it, there's a chance that you might do something rash." But there was no longer a way to confirm what the girl had tried to tell me. It might have been the girl that warned me to go back to Tokyo again, or else was saying to me who was here now, ignoring that warning. "Even though I warned you, what a fool." I had the feeling she said something like that. If you were to call Hinamizawa a rather lonely village, then Takatsudo was outright desolate. For your everyday city boy like me, I just couldn't understand why anybody would force themselves to live here. There were signs that people had, but they were all covered in dust or enveloped in ivy, indicating that it was all abandoned. People really lived in a place like this, didn't they? Well, it was a long time ago. A remote place like this is pretty rough for old folk to live. And the younger people probably wanted to try living in a more suitable place. If there's nobody left to take the reins, all that gets left is this. Even if I had no personal attachment to the village, seeing the disused buildings made me feel sentimental. It seemed that Ooishi also felt the same way. Was the wallet found over here? The person who found it must have a good reason to come to this desolate place. Yeah, there's some villagers who have filled out the mountains in here. They pass by here in the mornings and evenings. The villagers who work in the fields walk by here every day? No way. They probably go as far as they can by car. So in the early mornings and evenings, they pass by here and just happen to find a single wallet? They probably did. Where exactly did they say they found it? In a thicket just a bit further ahead. The person who found the wallet just happened to have some stomach cramps. Was planning to use the thicket to do his business, it seems. It was there he happened to find it. Probably hoping there was some toilet paper in there. Everything about that story just seems a little too convenient. Right from the discovery of the wallet, I can't shake the feeling that something's off. I expressed the feeling that I had from the start of the day, quite frankly. It seemed too good to be true, but it was unwavering proof. But if it was too perfect, sickeningly so. That was my feeling. You might actually be onto something by saying it's a little too perfect. Meaning, the truth is, I heard a little something from a friend of mine in the 4th Division, where Sonozaki Oryu referenced the kidnapping of the minister's grandson. She referenced it? Yep. It's been several days since the minister's grandson has been kidnapped, poor boy. It'd be nice if they let him go soon. It seems that old Oryu muttered something like that while on her veranda. And that little musing was conveyed to the various people working deep beneath the scenes at the Sonizawa family. Right. I heard something earlier from Sato-san, the informant. That when the leader of Oryu had a concern, somebody in the family would be considerate. So, in essence, she gave the order to release the hostage? I see it that way. The wallet being conveniently discovered just a ploy to hand the boy over to the police. Why would they release the hostage? Well, there's only one reason why someone would release a hostage, ain't there? What is it? They reached a deal. That would mean the minister promised to help the Hinamizawa Dam project. The dam project will definitely go away. At that moment, those words... Oh, no, the words the girls had said resurfaced in the back of my mind. In the end, it was turning exactly how she proclaimed. That young girl knew the circumstances. She knew everything about this kidnapping incident from the beginning to the end. Akasuka? The girl unexpectedly called my name. What is it? Go back to Tokyo. Huh? Before long, you will woefully regret coming to this village. That would be an incredibly pathetic thing to see. So I thought I'd warn you right now. Why would I come to regret it? Stop whining. When you tried crossing the road, when the don't walk sign was up, did your parents finish explaining why it was dangerous before pulling you back to the sidewalk? They'd pull you back right away, wouldn't they? They'd pull you back before explaining why it was dangerous, wouldn't they? In other words, it's something like that. The girl who knew everything from start to finish had warned me in the beginning. Go back to Tokyo. Akasuka's such a coward. We'll probably find the boy, but what happens afterwards will be a bit of a problem. How it'll be a problem, though, is something a single officer like me can't figure out. Do you know a girl named Furude Rika? What I had said was such a non sequitur that Ooishi sat stunned for a while. Of course I know her. She's the only daughter of the Furude family, one of the 3 families. What kind of girl is she? Well. This was an unexpected name to hear. I'm a bit surprised. Does public safety think that the Furude family smells fishy and wants to keep an eye on them? Share some of that information with me, please. It's not like that. It's just something caught my attention. Well, whatever.
It wouldn't do not to answer a question from a friend I've sat at the same table with.
I'm honored you call me a friend.
So that little lady is, well, somewhat of a village mascot. She's beloved by everyone in the village. Some of the older folk worship her especially.
Worship? I don't know much about it, you see.
Girls born in the Furuta family have somewhat of a sacred implication, it seems. It's one of the local beliefs in Hinamizawa. The living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama or something like that, or so the story goes, apparently.
Oyashiro-sama? Now that you mention it, I think I saw Oyashiro-sama written on some of the banners. What is Oyashiro-sama exactly?
Ah! It's the name of the garden deity of Hinamizawa. They believe it'll exact punishment on those who will do ill towards the village. Well, if there was such a convenient god around, the guys at the dam would have long since been done in by divine justice. Luckily, nothing like that has happened to anybody just yet. The grandson of the minister who trifled with the village as a result of Oyashiro-sama's anger was, what did they call it again? Oh, right. Onikakushi. The minister's grandson was demoned away. That would probably be how the script is being written. Oh. I see. It probably would turn into something like that.
Divine punishment wrought by Oyashiro-sama. Then, the culprit is the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. That girl? Even I didn't know exactly what I was saying. The fact that Oyashiro-sama laughed it off was a bit of a relief. No, not Oyashiro-sama, Ooishi. Oishi's joyous laughter was so infectious that I began to laugh like an idiot as well.
Oh, this is unusual. Ooishi, after laying into the horn several times, rolled the window down and leaned out, waving his arm in an exaggerated manner. It was a car, headed the opposite way. Until now, we hadn't run into any other cars except our own. And of all the places, it was at this desolate location. It seemed that Ooishi knew the owner of the car. The other car also chirped his horn and came to a stop.
Dr. Eerie! Good afternoon! The other car's window rolled down slowly, revealing a young man in a white overcoat. He was about my age, or perhaps a bit older, but you really can't judge someone by their appearance. Why, if it isn't Ooishi-san. Good afternoon. Fancy meeting you here. That's my line, Doctor. I never thought I'd see you here. What happened? Oh, nothing. Just a little house call.
Oh, really? Was it an emergency?
No, nothing quite that serious.
Thankfully.
I'll take my leave here. If I don't get back quickly, my staff will be angry with me.
Ha ha ha! Being the head of a clinic must be tough. Well then, take care.
The young doctor named Iri, after gesturing his farewell, drove forwards and soon disappeared around a corner. Ooishi also drove forwards, but soon came to a stop. He pulled out a worn map book from the dash. His expression didn't have an ounce of irreverence. He was perfectly serious. What is it?
The clinic shouldn't be making any house calls today. It must have been quite an emergency, or otherwise a patient with some extenuating circumstances.
Ooishi flipped the pages, opening up to the map of Takatsudo. After that, he took out a location around and started to figure out what our current location was. Are you saying the emergency is suspicious?
Didn't I say there's hardly anybody that lives in the Takatsudo area? The road we're on right now is here. Dr. Iri came from this direction.
Having no sense of our surroundings, I couldn't digest anything about the place he was indicating on the map.
We're headed towards the spot the wallet was found. By the way, that's over here. But see? If you're headed to one of the few residences in Takatsudo, it's the wrong road.
Meaning, Dr. Iri came from a direction where there are no residents?
As long as somebody working in the fields between these mountains didn't collapse. But if somebody collapses and you call in a doctor, normally you'd bring them back with you for a more detailed examination.
But just now, Dr. Iri said it wasn't serious. And it didn't seem like anyone else was in the car with him. Or she didn't say any more than that. I also said nothing more. That doctor just now examined a patient. Close by. Only that. The noisy radio had suddenly gone quiet. The sky had just suddenly turned an oppressive color. As Ooishi mused that it might start to rain, a torrential downpour started, as though trying not to disappoint him. Eventually, Ooishi stopped the car. The only sound to break the silence was the percussion of the rain on the roof and the soft squeak of the windshield wipers.
Let's do this a bit hush-hush, shall we?
Saying that in a quiet voice, he exited the car without an umbrella, careful not to make any noise. Ooishi leaned over, indicating the other side of the thicket. He was pointing to a prefabricated shed and a car that was parked beside it. The car looked obviously well cared for. It wasn't a vehicle that had been left for several years. What's that shed? It contains equipment used by the forestry service. I heard they don't renew it except during the summertime. Does that car belong to someone from the forestry service then? Don't know. It doesn't look like an official vehicle though. Ooishi was playing it cool, but my nervousness was gradually increasing. Just in case. Saying that, Ooishi returned to the car. I thought he was going to get an umbrella, but he had grabbed the onboard radio instead.
Hello, this is Ooishi. Do you read? Greetings. Yes, this is the Okonomiya SP. Ooishi, we read you loud and clear, over. I'm currently in front of the Forestry Service equipment shed, not the one in the direction of Higurashi, the one in Takatsudo, if you head there from Hinamizawa. Affirmative, copy that. There's some suspicious people in the shed. Proceeding to investigate. If you don't hear back from me in 5 minutes, get in touch with the local police substation and have them send a cruiser as soon as possible. If you would, please. Understood.
Well then, shall we go take a look? Since he was first confined here, he had heard the sound of a car multiple times. So he just thought the far-off sound was more of the same. However, the reaction from his captors was, until now, something he hadn't seen before. They jumped, reacting as if shocked by a jolt of electricity, and pressed against the window, cautiously peering outside. They stopped.
Somebody from the Forestry Service? This is bad.
Looks like a cop to me. One of the captors lifted the boy from his collar and pressed a blade against his cheek.
Kid, keep quiet for a bit.
I think you know this, but if you try and shout, there'll be problems. Higurashi was sure that the doctor had reported things to the police. He had felt relief when he thought he was saved, but not imagining that his captors would resort to violence when they were cornered. His anxiety remained unabated.
But what do we do?
Got a bad time. Take the kid and slip out the back. Meet back here when the heat's off. One of the perpetrators grabbed the boy by the collar and forced him to stand. Of course, Inugai Toshiki tried to resist by stating that his illness had been aggravated by this rough treatment, but his captors paid no heed. The door was violently banged upon. "Excuse me! Hello?" The door was banged on again. Inaga Toshiki hesitated for a moment to respond to that voice by yelling. However, while he was being indecisive, his mouth was covered, taking that option away from him. The leader of the captors waved at the other to go. The younger perpetrator nodded in response, and while keeping the boy's mouth covered, started heading towards the back door. "Hello? Do you need something?" "How do you do? This is the police. Would you mind opening the door? The sudden rain has them a bit of a trouble." I'll just open." The moment the lock was undone, Ooishi forced the door open, and with a gleam of menace in his eyes, he pushed the man aside as he stepped into the room. Then, in the small, empty room, he was able to quickly discern that the boy he was looking for was nowhere to be seen. I heard this was an equipment shed for the forestry service, but there's nothing here at all." There was nothing inside the room that would indicate this was an equipment shed. There was only a mountain of blankets, indicating that someone was sleeping here, alongside empty food packets strewn about. It's been empty for some time now. Never seen no equipment stored around here." "But this is the forestry service building, isn't it?" "Are you from the forestry service?" "How about you, police?" The two of them glared at each other suspiciously, but Ooishi and the man steadfastly refused to reveal their identity before the other did. The man, judging from the sharp look in Oishi's eyes, realized that it would be hard to talk his way out of this one. No matter what he said, the most time he could buy would probably be a few dozen seconds. Only the sound of rain filled this tense moment. Just then, they heard the sound of a struggle from far off. Ooishi had a hunch. There was no doubt that Akasuka, who was circling around back, had run into the perpetrators while trying to slip away. As Ooishi thought, the man in front of him reacted a moment faster. The man swung with an attack that was more intended to obscure Oishi's vision rather than actually hit him on the face. Seizing his opportunity, the man aimed a kick at Oishi's groin without any hesitation. But he missed his mark and was unable to land the critical blow. The man, trying to pin Ooishi, grabbed him by the base of his neck with both hands and fiercely tried to push him down. But as Ooishi fell backwards, as if kicking the man upward, he dug his foot into the man's midsection. With that leg acting as a fulcrum, the man was flung by the falling Ooishi as if by a circle throw. The two of them squared off in the pouring rain. "Oh my, isn't this interesting? You wanna go?" Ooishi, as if trying to cheer himself on, grinned smugly. He then stood up while brushing the mud off himself. Even though he countered the assault, Ooishi was getting up rather awkwardly compared to the man who he threw, who swiftly sprang to his feet. "Ooishi, hurry!" Akasuka's voice ran out from the distance. Judging from the distress in his voice, he was already engaged in a fight and wanted Ooishi to reconvene with him. But Oishi's hands were full as well. "Akasuka! Sorry, but can you wait a bit?" The man raised both fists into a stance of hate at him being trained with karate or some other form of martial art. Of course, Ooishi, as an officer of the law, was decently versed in judo. He also had the moxie to have been through his fair share of fights before. Because of that, he could tell that the man in front of him was quite a bit better at fighting than he was. Damn it. Thinking that was just going to be easy just because the order came from the Sonozaki family to release hostages has been a big mistake. "You're pretty good. It's been a while since I got this worked up." Ooishi played out the situation like it was no sweat. His opponent, seeing his attitude, took that to mean that Ooishi wasn't going to lay down easily. The man wildly charged forward, attempting to grab Ooishi. If the man managed a successful clinch from his low stance, Ooishi would be tackled to the ground and end up being mounted. It was something you saw often when children fought, but it was a really bad position since you couldn't do much once you were in it. Ooishi, responding to that move, also lowered his stance to collide with the man head-on. That moment they clashed, Ooishi grabbed the man's lapel. As he yanked the lapel upwards, he smashed the man's solar plexus with the elbow of the same arm. It was a move from Oishi's own personal brand of brawling judo. He then grabbed on with his free hand and attempted to throw his opponent. But the man lowered his center of gravity, swung his arm in a large arc, entwining them with Oishi's. Not only that, but he had forced both Ooishi and elbows to the outside, and Ooishi, now in an awkward position, was in danger of exposing his back with his hand still touching the man's chest. This guy practiced Aikido or grappling, didn't he? Ooishi, cursing the fact that his fingers were twisted in this man's shirt and couldn't get away, released his grip. But he was still in the awkward position of being bent over, and to the top of it, at zero range. The man must be able to read Oishi's movements completely as he tried to slow him into a better position. And then took the palms of his hands and swiftly clapped them over Oishi's ears. Clapping the ears in any other martial art except for self-defense was basically forbidden. Karate and judo didn't recognize it as a legal technique. It was that much of a simple and dangerous attack. Ooishi raised both of his hands and tried to reflexively clutch at his own ears. But before that could happen, the man wrapped his arms around Oishi's neck. His thick biceps clenched firmly around the base of Oishi's neck like a vice. Ooishi instinctively thought he was going to be killed. After all, it wasn't hard to believe that a man like that, who was accustomed to fighting, could crush his opponent's neck. But his opponent didn't do that. He chose to keep his hold and force Ooishi to lose consciousness. That's why Ooishi, at that moment, even though his face was twitching, was grinning widely. Even though his opponent had a chance to kill him, he didn't choose to. He was thinking, this guy is never capable of killing me. However, even though that might be the case, the man's hold on his neck was by no means simple. In no time at all, Oishi's consciousness began to fade. Having the experience of being taken down countless times in judo during his student's days, Ooishi was utterly resigned to the fact that it was over. Akasuka was finally recovering from the intense pain of being kicked in a rather sensitive area. He had bumped into the captor carrying the boy by the back entrance. He had seen Inogai Toshiki's picture plenty of times, but wasn't able to immediately ascertain that the boy in front of him was the real deal, what with his mouth covered in packing tape. Seriously, dude? The guy is carrying a boy out of an abandoned shed in the middle of nowhere, and you don't think it's the kidnapped victim whose wallet happened to be dropped around here as well? Also, with his limited experience, it wasn't hard for him to panic over how to deal with the situation. Of course, the perpetrator didn't overlook this momentary lapse. His kick landed squarely in a critical spot, with Akasuka not even having time to call for help. As the man flung the boy over his shoulders, he headed towards the front of the shed. But upon hearing Oishi's bellowing voice, he gave up on going that direction. He then dashed off towards the forest. As if the weight of the boy slung over his shoulders wasn't even there. Akasuka was lost for a moment. Meeting up with Ooishi while fighting with the enemy was far the safer option. But he couldn't just lose sight of the fleeing man. Akasuka stood up and chased after the captor's back. He ran through a short thicket, branches and falling leaves crunching underfoot. The tips of the branches raked and clawed at him, small scratches inscribing themselves on his body one after another. He kept on stepping into puddles and mud, and his shoes were soon filled with murky water. For Akasuka, traveling through this unexplored forest was, even though it was an emergency situation, extremely unpleasant. Stop! This is the police! As he said that, He regretted it immediately, as it was but a waste of breath. There wasn't a thief in the world that could lightly stop when told by the police. To a city boy like Akasuka, running through this forest was an arduous task. However, it must not have been an easy task for the man carrying the minister's grandson. He neither gained nor lost ground in his pursuit. Akasuka, upon realizing that, gained back a bit of his composure. Just keep on. We're running in the same conditions. In fact, the man running with an awkward stride was far more of a disadvantage. They couldn't run forever. Eventually, he'd definitely trip and fall. As long as he was being hounded, he would definitely stumble. And soon, his wish was fulfilled. Ah! The man, who had stepped in something and lost his balance, was no able longer to bear the weight of the boy dropping him. Akasuka, in all honesty, didn't care about the perpetrator at all, just as long as he could ensure the safety of Inigai Toshiki. So, if the perpetrator ran off by himself, it was perfectly acceptable. But it seemed that Inigai Toshiki was important to the man as well, and didn't elect to just run away empty-handed. Akasuka didn't know what to do in this kind of situation. His first priority should be to ensure the safety of the boy, subduing his captor being less important. Grappling with the perpetrator wasn't something he had planned on, but most likely it was either do or die. Akasuka's moment of indecision proved to be fatal. The man, aiming right between, or rather, for both of Akasuka's eyes, struck out with a jab. Not wanting that, Akasuka raised both his hands to shield his face. At that moment, the man kicked at an unguarded midsection. The pain felt like his vital organs were being squeezed out of his body, but he latched onto his opponent's leg. But his opponent didn't hesitate one bit. Leading with his seized foot, the man jumped at Akasuka, applying pressure and pushing him down. Akasuka was unable to withstand that and fell, but under no circumstances was he letting that leg go. The two men fell together in a tangled heap. The man was desperate to pull his leg from Akasuka, but having fallen in an awkward position, was unable to. The two of them rolled on the ground, floundering around, trying to gain an advantage. But Akasuka, who was holding onto his opponent's knee with both hands, and that opponent, who had complete freedom to move his upper body, were in two completely different situations. The man gained a positional advantage on Akasuka, who was still latched onto his legs and couldn't move away, as he pounded full force on his head with both fists. Not only that, he found a rock nearby and beat it against Akasuka's skull. The difference between being hit with a fist and being hit with a rock was vast. Akasuka quickly thought letting go of this man's legs to free his hands to protect his head. Seems like a good idea. But if he let go here, the man would get away. If he didn't dig in here, everything would be for naught. The style doesn't make any sense. If he let go, then he'd get away and then the boy is safe. He was going to save him and go back to Tokyo. If he could do that, then this was goodbye to the freakish village. Without looking, I could tell my forehead split open and was gushing blood. But I didn't let go of the man's leg. How could I? I won't let go. When the man realized that no matter how much he beat my head, he wasn't getting away, he used both his hands to grab my throat and to crush my windpipe. I pulled my head back as a slight form of resistance. Use your fucking gun, you moron! Why does this novel just have to make the main character a fucking idiot? Like, you're a cop! You just talked about the fact that you have guns! Use it! In fact, why didn't you have it out in the first place? The man's hands enveloped my neck and began to crush it like a vice. It was less about the pain of not being able to breathe, so much as it was choking so hard I felt like I was going to throw up. It felt like my stomach was going to turn itself inside out, but I could only endure it. No, you could fight back. Damn it. My throat. I won't let go. I can't. Yeah, you can. You can let go and punch him in the fucking face. I don't want to be here. I wanted to resolve this. Go back to Tokyo. Back to Tokyo. Talk to Yuki about our unborn child. We're going to talk about our bright future. I had no intention of loosening my grip. However, It loosened just a bit, and the man's leg came free. The man kicked as hard as possible, and I tumbled backwards. My head was spinning, and I was unable to get up right away. I couldn't even put any strength into getting up in the first place. Even so, I couldn't back down. If I let him escape now, this chance would never come again. Even just catching their scent was nothing short of a miracle. If we weren't able to get the minister's grandson back here, there wouldn't be another chance. The man tried to drag the boy to his feet, but the kid was displaying some unexpected resistance, allowing me to get up unnoticed. Unexpected? What the fuck are you talking about? Of course he would resist. I grasped the rock the man had just beat me over the head with. Now it's my turn. The rock should be able to supplement what the meager strength I had left, adding more than enough power to my attack. My fist, still wrapped around the rock, dug into the side of the man's torso. It seems like I hurt him quite a bit. The man rolled around for a bit, clutching his side. Freed from the man's grip, the boy hid behind me. Nugai Toshiki, right? I've come to help you. To the boy, those were the words he was waiting for the most. But the crisis was still not over. That was because even though he was still clutching at his side, the man had gotten up again and taken a fighting stance. I could see in the man's eyes the resentment at the pain I had caused him, and the confidence that he could still beat me. If I would have clashed head-on again, he might not even stop if my head was split open. Stop resisting. Surrender quietly. You should just hand the boy over. Do you want me to snap your neck? Who would listen to you now? Reinforcements are already on their way. There's nowhere for you to run. The man reacted adversely to the word of reinforcements. That was because he knew that arguing like this wasn't just a waste of time, but it put him closer to danger. Realizing that, the man shifted mental gears almost too quickly. Then let's finish this fast. How about this? What? The man pulled from his backpack. Just absurd idiocy happening right now. A gun. Of course, I'm a police officer. It's not like I don't know what a gun is, but having one pointed at me was something I never experienced before. Was it real? Of course it was! There's no way it'd be a replica in a situation like this. Put both your hands behind your head and lay down quietly. Don't get cocky, you villain. I won't do anything you say, you stupid idiot. Do you not know what this is without me shooting you with it? Then shoot. Reinforcements will hear the gunshot and head right over here. Are you stupid? We're in the middle of the forest, and on top of that, it's raining. They'll never hear a thing. As long as we still had that gun, no matter how much I yelled at him, I was at a distinct disadvantage. But I still had a fighting chance. If I were in his shoes, instead of wasting time yelling at each other like this, I would just shoot and take the boy. That was the fastest, and would suppress any sort of further resistance from him. But the man was demanding my surrender, without having fired a shot, meaning that he either didn't want to shoot, or he couldn't. In other words, the man in front of me was soft, or not. If I could buy even just a little more time. But your own fucking gun. You literally just said you had one. In the car. The factors that would lead to my victory were numerous. Ooishi was probably on his way, and the reinforcements we called for before coming here should already be on the way too. Not only that, they should have contacted the local police box. Without a doubt, somebody stationed in the village would shoot here much quicker than that. Do you not remember how long it took me to get through this fucking crowd? Damn it! Do I have to put a bullet in you to understand how dangerous this thing is? There's no escape. Don't add to your crimes. At that moment, I heard bustle in the foliage and heavy footsteps approaching. If Ooishi were coming here, it was a whole new ballgame. Not really, if he has a gun. The man couldn't have more than one gun. No, but he has 2 bullets. Ooishi! Over here! Over here! Huh? I had thought that time was on my side, but I had failed to even imagine that the enemy could also have reinforcements. Why does this book make every fucking protagonist the dumbest fucking moron in the world. I'm sorry, but they literally talked about why would you go into a place where there's possibly a kidnapped child and not have your gun out? I know this is Japan, but they literally just said that they have guns. Like, they literally said that in the car. What the fuck is your problem? Ugh. You could tell the man who had just appeared was one of the perpetrators just by looking at him. What are you doing? If you don't hurry up, the police will get here. Stop lollygagging. What happened to Ooishi? Aw, that chubby fella? He's down for the counts. Yes? Damn it. The boy, sensitive to intimidating danger, pulled up behind my back. How could this be? Damn it. Your buddy isn't coming. Serves you right. Shoes on the other foot now. As they backed up against a large tree while still protecting the boy, the second man also pulled out a gun. Why haven't you pulled your gun out yet? You won't be saying this twice. Put your hands on your head and lie down. I refuse. As I shot in protest, blood erupted from my left shoulder, and it took a few moments to register that I was been shot. I actually like you until this moment. How are you a cop? How? No, you said you practiced in the range. How is this the first actual gunshot you've heard? You literally just said you practiced in the shooting range. And also, how would you not have heard a gunshot if you're a fucking police officer? You would have to go through training for that. Like, I know this is Japan and they're, like, guns, but the police officers, they do have guns. I'm sorry, this is just bullshit and stupid. I'm not reading that line. There was no comparing the pain. It was a fear you knew only after you'd been shot. How would you know that if you've never been shot before? Sir? Are you okay? Are you okay? The boy in his confusion tugged at my clothes, agitating me even further. I wanted to put on a bold face and reassure him, but my voice was hoarse and had the opposite effect. I'm alright. I've already called for backup. They'll be here, full squad, soon. It'll be quicker to put up through your head before the cops get here. But that family said no needless killing, so I'm taking it easy on you. Don't mess with me, alright? I'm back. It was very, very bad. The second man was a completely different beast from the first. He had no signs of indecisiveness or mercy. If this man said he'd shoot, he'd shoot. He wasn't someone that a man like me could buy time from. I really hate to admit it, but at that moment, the image of Yuki's smiling face crossed the back of my mind. I knew it was me. I was warning myself not to throw my life away over a matter of pride. Of course I didn't want to die here. I was just starting a life with Yuki. I wanted to see the face of our soon-to-be-born child. Why should I risk my life for some minister's grandson when I was such a critical juncture in my own life? Damn it! I need to stop rambling at myself. So what do I do? Give up the boy? Extend my own life? What a good idea. Everyone's life is precious. My own life was in danger. Nobody would blame me. It hurts. If I had known it would have been this painful, I would have been playing the tough guy. Once again, you would have heard a fucking gunshot. You know what? I'm gonna go with this right now. Right here, Google. Do Japanese police carry guns? Yes, they do. And it was 1949, so you can't even bullshit me because this says this is like in the 1980s or something. So I don't know who wrote this, but clearly you don't know anything about cops, and why would you think that a cop wouldn't have a fucking gun? I don't know why the little thing bothers me, but it really does, because The thing I don't like is that it's creating conflict in a way, like, they could do this like better, you know? Like maybe the guy kicked the gun out of his hand or something. Then that would be acceptable. But the fact that he has a gun and he hasn't even drawn the gun, what? Why are you such an idiot? You know? And he would have definitely heard a gunshot before. That's pretty stupid. So clearly whoever wrote this doesn't know anything about the police. And clearly thinks that police in Japan have never heard gunshots. Or never had to, like... I mean, come on. Would you... I mean, like, I'm... If it was only that loud, it would be drowned out by the rain in the forest. It wasn't something that someone far away could hear. Damn it. Wait, just wait. I don't want to die. And I don't want to kill ya. As long as you understand. Don't shoot, okay? Don't shoot. I have a wife waiting for me at home. I don't want to die. I won't shoot as long as you don't yell or nothing. Just put your hands in your head and lie down. Will you really? You'll keep your promise, right? This is a promise between men. I will. It's a promise between men. Keep your promise. Keep it. I'm gonna get down on the ground, okay? I'm getting down. I'll keep my promise, so stop pointing that gun at me. Still thinking of shooting me, aren't you? You want to shoot me, don't you? When I get down the ground, you're just gonna shoot me in the back of the head, aren't you? I won't. Fine. I'll put it away. Put the gun away. It's a promise between men. There. No problem now, right? Yeah. Absolutely no complaints. Ah! It was over in a flash. The moment he lowered his gun, Ooishi didn't let his chance slip by. Ooishi had been assessing the situation for quite some time when behind the two men. But since they had their guns trained on me, he didn't really have a chance to jump in. Seeing the look on Oishi's face indicating that he wanted me to create an opening, I took on that role completely. Ooishi forcefully lifted the arm that was holding his gun. He then took the gun from the man's hand in only an instant. The other man, who was a bit slow in grasping what was happening, pointed his gun at them, but with his ally grappling with Ooishi, he couldn't pull the trigger. If that man was the one that he was wrestling with, Ooishi at the moment, he might have shot without hesitation. But this man wouldn't shoot. He couldn't shoot. Ooishi kicked the other man away, and while aiming the stolen gun with his left hand, pulled out his own. With guns akimbo, he was aiming at both men at the same time. I do believe that's checkmate. See, Ooishi is his gun. It was perfectly played, but he whistled the gun pointed at them. The men shouted, "Scram!" as they scattered away full speed. It was over in an instant. The two running up away without putting up a fight was honestly unexpected. Ooishi, quietly clicking his tongue in his man's modest slipped both guns into his pant pockets. Those guys know their stuff. What do you mean? An officer won't fire at someone who's fleeing. I want to keep my pension here. Ooishi and I grinned at each other. Are you Inoga Toshiki, the grandson of the Minister in Construction Inoga? Yes! This is going to be a major incident. They probably only cut the tail off the lizard, though. Ooishi smiled amusedly. The fact that the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance, or rather, the Sonozaki family behind them, was pulling the strings was apparent, but proving it wouldn't be easy. And with apologies to Ooishi, this incident was unlikely to go public. If this caused an uproar, it would obviously lead to the minister losing his office. Why? With HQ having decided that doing so was in the national interest, this would probably be cleaned up quietly. It might be a rough way of saying it, but this was born in the shadows, and was going to die in the shadows. Ooishi already probably understood the implications behind this incident. For the time being, let's cordon off the area. since it seems that one of them still has a gun. After that, let's get Inoga-kun to safety and get you to the hospital. As the tension in the situation faded, the pain from the gunshot wound in my shoulder blossomed once again. My forehead was also stinging painfully, and had grown hot enough to start a fire. Thinking that the tension had caused me to sweat, I wiped my forehead, but what came off was a large amount of blood. I realized my shirt had been stained bright crimson from the blood flowing from my head. I turned around. The boy was safe and sound, without a doubt. There would probably be an investigation on the man who ran, but that was for another day. At this point in time, I could safely say we had cleared the major hurdle of securing the boy's safety. As soon as I recognized that, it felt like lights in my head had been hit by a power failure. My knees buckled from underneath me, the ground there feeling as soft as a cloud. It didn't feel unpleasant, even as I was covered in rain-soaked mud. Ooishi came closer, asking if I was okay, but somehow I couldn't tell. I turned off the switch to turn it off, right in my head. The exhaustion enveloped me. Sleep. Something softer than any blanket wrapped around me. Alright, there might not be too much left, but this is getting pretty long for this chapter. Oh, perfect! Ending. Okay. Alright, that's it. I don't know if there's another chapter. Okay, it looks like there is another chapter. It's probably just the epilogue. But, yeah, I was going to say we're going to stop it there because it's almost 2 hours, and I like to try to keep these all one chapter and not split up chapters. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and follow me on Twitch as well, where I do my live streams of variety games. I just finished Mass Effect and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next. I'm thinking I'm going to do a trial in Ace Attorney. So, thank you so much. I am the beautiful Sky Buddy and have a wonderful evening. Adieu!